You were New Zealand's Prime Minister from, I'm going to say this slowly, 2017 to 2023.
Correct, yeah.
I think we can all agree that those were some very tough years to lead a country. There was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and really no playbook for this is how you do it. Today, many of the people in the audience and listening are in uncharted territory.
Yeah.
The world is still uncertain. I'd love to hear a little bit about the lessons that you had from that time and how folks could take those for the uncertainty that's happening today.
It was. I mean, those are some tough years, and I just want to acknowledge that actually not everyone's really keen to talk about them particularly because they were so tough. New Zealand also had a particularly rough run. We, in 2019, had a domestic terror attack in New Zealand where a white supremacist used military-style semi-automatic weapons to take the lives of 51 members of our Muslim community. And that's a level of violence that just was totally unprecedented for us as a nation. We had a volcanic eruption at the end of that year that took more than 20 lives, and then of course COVID. New Zealand is a very safe and beautiful country. I feel like I should just add that.
I think that's a good. It's a good ad.
Whenever I talk, particularly about the volcanic eruption, that is not commonplace for us. So I just thought I'd add that. It's lovely.
Yes.
And then of course COVID, and so it was a very, very difficult time, and so. Particularly through COVID, but as a combination of all of those experiences, on reflection, I think one of the key lessons for me is that we are led to believe in leadership, that in order to command the trust and confidence of the people that you lead, you must display absolute knowledge at all times. You must display that you know exactly everything that needs to be known about the crisis that's in front of you and about the next, be it weeks, months, years, coming out the other side of that crisis. And the same, I think, could be said for any assumptions around when you're going through a really disruptive period. Now, I would argue that I don't think that that is what leaders need to display, either in crisis or during significant disruption. Because COVID was an experience where it was so clear leaders did not know everything about this illness. We were learning in real time, and people could see that. They knew we didn't know everything. That was a moment to stand in front of the communities that we served and say, we are learning as we go, but we pledge to share what we know when we know it. And in order to make sure that we acknowledge the fear and uncertainty, we don't have all the information, but we do have a plan. And so I think that's the key difference. You don't have to know everything, but you have to have a plan in spite of that lack of knowledge. And I do think that's the key to building trust. The public know when you don't know the answer to something, so just say it. And in the response to that period of fear and uncertainty, perhaps the next applicable thing would be this technological disruption we're going through. What is causing people the most fear right now? Probably when it comes to AI, the loss of jobs, the implications that it might have. Well, you can't predict the end point, but you can work through a plan to help support people through those stages. How do you rapidly re-educate and support people through transition? What, if you're a policymaker, is the safety nets through people? We don't have to predict everything, but we do need a plan. Yeah.
I love that so much because we do, as leaders, whether you're leading a country or leading a small team, we do feel the need to know the answer.
Yeah.
And so it's really a great invitation to say, you don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to have a way to help the team through it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the key difference. I would say I don't know to an answer to a question publicly.
Yeah.
But then I would endeavour, either if it was plausible to find the answer or just demonstrate what we were doing in spite of that knowledge gap. And I always encourage people in politics to be a little bit more willing to say, I don't know.
I think we could all use that invitation. On that sort of note, you've been widely praised as an empathetic leader for your empathetic leadership style, but you were also very decisive and got a lot done. So I'd love to hear about how you use both empathy and decisiveness to get stuff done.
I think it is a bit of one of these ideas I really love to disrupt a little bit, because there is this assumption that if you're empathetic, that somehow you're dithering. Yeah. You know, you're a kind, thoughtful person, and so that means that probably it's a little hard for you to make a decision. I don't really know where the origin of that is, but in my experience, it's the opposite. I mean, if you're driven in the role that you're in by this desire to serve, you know, a really compassionate approach, a particular set of values, that usually means you're pretty clear-eyed on what needs to be done and how you're getting there, because you're motivated by something that's really coming in quite strongly and quite deeply for you. The second point I would say is that, and this is a little extension of empathetic leadership and that sensitivity that sometimes comes with empathetic leadership, I very openly have suffered from imposter syndrome my whole life. I talk about it because I have nothing to lose by talking about it. And I know that there are other people in leadership who I respect who also suffer imposter syndrome. But isn't it interesting I use that word suffer? Like it's some kind of physical ailment. If it's not a physical ailment, it is at least perceived as a weakness. And yet, when you think about all the things that you do to compensate for any time that you have doubt, someone asks you to do a job and you think, I don't think I've got what it takes, or someone congratulates you on something you achieved and you think, oh, I think it was a bit of a fluke. You know, those are usually some telltale signs. But what you do generally to overcompensate for that is you prepare, you research, you go and make sure that you become an expert on an issue, and you bring in those advisors and those who can help support you in your decision making. And once you go through a process like that, when someone then says to you, Prime Minister, is the decision A, B, or C? I have spent so much time deep diving into that issue, I know exactly where I'm going. So again, you know, these ideas that we've previously positioned as being weaknesses in politics, in leadership, just any of these spaces, actually, I think, are strengths. And so I like the idea of challenging that just a little bit.